Communities across the central U.S. remained inundated with floodwaters Wednesday after a train of deadly storms dumped historic amounts of rainfall on the region. Flood advisories and warnings abounded from Illinois and Ohio to Louisiana and Mississippi on Wednesday as floodwaters dumped into rivers and flowed downstream. About 24 river gauge sites were at major flood stage, and 122 locations across the central U.S. were at or above flood stage, spanning multiple rivers and tributaries, according to AccuWeather. In Kentucky, where at least 5 people died in the storms, the Ohio River is set to crest in Louisville, marking one of the 10 worst flood events in the city's history. The storms were fueled by a stationary atmospheric river last week that spawned dozens of tornadoes and overwhelmed communities with up to 16 inches of rain in 4 days, a 100 to 1,000 year rainfall event, meteorologists said. At least 22 deaths across Kentucky, Arkansas, Missouri, Indiana, Mississippi, and Georgia have been linked to the storms and the historic flooding. Stretches of Cincinnati near the Ohio River will remain under a flood warning until Friday, with forecasters urging residents to avoid roads submerged under floodwaters. The Ohio River crested at just above 60 feet on Monday, according to the National Weather Service. Though the heaviest rainfall has come and gone, forecasters warned of high water and flooding impacts through the rest of the week. Stretches of U.S. Route 52 are expected to flood, along with additional low-lying roads near the river. Backwater flooding is expected along the Little Miami, Great Miami, and Licking Rivers, forecasters said.
Bridge.
The National Weather Service said the river level is supposed to fall below the flood stage by Friday.
That was a walk down.
Roy, Tommy, Stucker navigated the floodwaters by boat to his West Point home in far southwest Louisville, greeted by his wife, who stood on the front patio holding his 5-year-old son Tommy. Nearby, crews from the Pleasure Ridge Park Fire District deployed their boat to check on the few residents who haven't already left Dixie Beach Road. Mother Nature has not been kind to Stucker and his neighbors the past week. The waters, waist-high in some places, will only get higher with the Ohio River set to crest in the area Wednesday, but some residents have chosen to stay and brave whatever else happens overnight. Stucker owns 2 homes on the street, where he supports his wife, mother-in-law, and 6 children. Even as floodwaters swallowed his street, he stayed home to care for his animals, making trips out for supplies as needed. Everything is on my shoulders, so generator goes out. Everybody looks at me, he said. Parts of the central U.S. are still assessing the damage from last week's storms are in the path of another storm system threatening to unleash strong thunderstorms beginning Thursday. An area of nearly 30 million people in Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and Kentucky is at risk of severe scattered storms capable of large hail, damaging winds, and bouts of heavy rain. Such conditions could complicate ongoing recovery efforts, especially in particularly hard-hit areas such as western Tennessee and Kentucky, meteorologists warned. Dyersburg Mayor John Holden told local media that city police, fire, and Dyer County rescue crews helped more than 40 people from South Dyersburg, where widespread flooding has damaged several homes and businesses. This is probably going to be the 2nd or 3rd highest flood event we've had in Dyersburg, so we're kind of aware of it, said Mayor Holden. We don't like to practice it, but we're just thankful. We have good people that work for the city, departments, leadership, and department head roles. Mayor Holden says the rescues began around 5 a.m. Monday. We just warned them and advised them to leave if they could, said Holden. Some did, some didn't. I didn't want to brag on all the city departments. They're working well together, and it's a lot of moving parts with this, and everyone has performed greatly. I just want to make sure we take care of everybody. No mandatory evacuation has been issued for the city, but one has been issued for communities of Bogota and Cocklebur in the county. Several roadblocks are set up leading to these communities, so local media cameras were not able to get to them, as many roads were also covered by water. Emergency officials expect the Forcatura River to crest at 30 feet around 1 a.m. Wednesday, but thankfully, river levels are not increasing for the time being. The American Red Cross has an emergency shelter set up at First United Methodist Church in Dyersburg for those in need. After days of deluges overfilled rivers to near-record levels across Kentucky, residents were anxious Tuesday to return to their flooded homes and assess what's salvageable, even as stubbornly high waters kept some of them waiting even longer. Susan Williams returned to her rural Franklin County home with her 4 dogs and 3 cats. She left Sunday while the waters kept rising. Now, her house and a neighbor's looked like they were on an island in brown waters. Williams and some friends loaded her animals onto a small boat and paddled back and forth, dropping them off at the house built by her parents. Water was slowly receding in flooded Frankfort, and officials hoped that by the end of Wednesday, most could get back into their homes, Governor Andy Beshear said at a news conference. Beshear urged people to wait if they couldn't get to their homes without driving through water. Remember, even as much as we love our stuff, and sometimes it's memories and photographs that are impacted, it's our lives and the lives of our family and friends that matter, Beshear said. Officials warned of flooding expected along the Ohio River in Henderson and Owensboro into next week, with swift water rescue teams at the ready. Officials in Frankfort diverted traffic, turned off utilities to businesses, and instituted a curfew as the Kentucky River crested Monday, just short of a record set in 1978. Water service has been restored, but wastewater isn't back up yet, Beshear said. Inundated rivers are the latest threat from persistent storms that have killed at least 23 people, including 10 in Tennessee. At least 157 tornadoes struck within 7 days beginning March 30th, according to a preliminary report from the National Weather Service. Flood danger remains elsewhere, including parts of Tennessee, Arkansas, and Indiana. Louisville, Kentucky, Mayor Craig Greenberg said Tuesday that no further evacuations were expected along the Ohio River, which is expected to crest Wednesday before the water begins receding. He said the Louisville Fire Department and others had helped 66 people evacuate a hotel surrounded by water. Beshear's office said more than 800 customers still had no access to water and nearly 4,000 were under boil water advisories. Over the past several days, many of the 110 residents of Monterey, Kentucky, had left their homes. Steve Carter lives on a hill outside town and sheltered his father-in-law, who lives in the flood zone where the water remained high on Tuesday. "This is the worst I've seen it since I've been around," Carter said. "Right now, it's to the point there's not much to be done. Now people are just waiting for the water to recede so they can start the cleanup process." A small distiller in Frankfort turned its stills back on Tuesday and was back to making bourbon. At Glens Creek Distilling, the flooding narrowly avoided the main distillery, but a neighboring 26,000 square foot, 2,415 square meter, warehouse remained underwater. Owner David Meyer got back in on Tuesday, but he said it could take another day for the water to recede to check equipment and some bourbon barrels. Whether barrels that went underwater would have to be destroyed, he doesn't yet know. "And so we might as well do what we can do here in the meantime," Meyer said. "Keep making bourbon." It's the latest severe weather to cause deaths and widespread damage in Kentucky. 2 months ago, at least 24 people died in a round of storms that swelled creeks and covered roads with water. Hundreds had to be rescued, and most of the deaths were caused by vehicles getting stuck in high water. Winona Harp has been staying at a friend's house across the street and boating to her flooded home in Lockport, Kentucky, to tend to her dogs, rabbits, and chickens that she moved to higher ground. Harp said some homes are completely inundated in Lockport, about 50 miles, 80 kilometers, east of Louisville. You can just barely see of the top of them, she said. Some of them are just completely underwater.
Over there's the skate park.
Back in Frankfort, a neighborhood was setting up tables for cleaning supplies on Tuesday ahead of the next massive cleanup. The first assignment for the crew of neighbors, a couple of homes on higher ground with flooded basements. As soon as we can get in there, we'll help them clean out and just kind of go downstream, said Carly Cockley, who expects a mucky mess on her home's first floor.
At about 52 feet on Thursday or Wednesday, I think, and devastating, most probably 2 or 3 feet in these boat storage.
Welcome to Milton, Kentucky.